Oh wow, that was crazy stuff there. Yeah, I was losing focus and going nutty because I had to process what I ran into. I'm getting real caught up on processing the moment, but if I ain't listening, I'll start jumping all over the place and losing focus. So when I got caught up on being bullied my whole life, I didn't know it was inside me, and I stumbled into it, and it had to come out. So I sat right here in this chair and bawled my ever living soul out. And I'm not weak for doing it. Not at all. It there's a very important, if anyone, and I want to start by saying Disney is the most magical company on the planet. There's been corruption in there, but don't pay attention to it. Good teenagers, take off your clothes. Um, but that's just one individual making a bad decision. Uh, Disney's brought more joy and hope and love to this universe than probably any company on the planet. It's built on magic. Um, it was. It stinks when you chase profits because you lose the magic, right? The the profits of a business getting dumped into the business makes the business better. It does. The spirit of the owner, Walt Disney, lives on in that business because his light was so darn bright. It had to be. Look how much joy he brought us. That's kind of how the pineal gland will operate if you get everything cleaned out. Trauma processing's tough. When you first start, it's depression, it's mania, it's anger, it's all those are just the bad emotions. But sometimes, and I think it's so funny, it's in Inside Out, that sadness gets lost. It's it's critical. How could we have empathy with no sadness? You got to feel bad for somebody. Well, understanding to be sad, like when they tell you not to cry at a funeral or something silly like that, don't listen to that stuff. Feel the moment. It's okay to miss that person. It's okay to enjoy that person. What you'll do at a funeral is process all the emotions, and that's why people come together to share. Because if you get 100 people in a room, they probably got 1,000 good stories, and at that time, nobody's looking at guilt and resentment, towards that person. So it's just sadness. And when you get really, really, really hurt in life, and you process it as anger or terror, fear, guilt, or you resent others. Resentment is a bad one. Resentment's a real bad one. Because I was resented my whole life because I was not normal. you know, I never acted normal. So you couldn't be around normal people. That stinks. I got stuck on it again. Darn it. Forget. Oh, trauma processing. So sadness is the magic elixir when you got really hurt. My big giant Uber driver that made me feel safe here um, told me that life's hard. I say, yeah, it sure as hell is. Preaching to the choir, brother. But and he came from Lebanon, so his bloodline's longer than my bloodline of trauma, because I'm a white guy, right? Do we want to touch on whether or not? Um, oh man, you should listen to a upper middle class white guy. Well, if it helps, I'm homeless. Oh man. But the Lebanese have more trauma. They've been not processing fear and anger and guilt and resentment longer than the Americans. Because as your perspective changes, melting pot. You get everybody's perspective, you get wiser. If you've always been Lebanese and Lebanon borders have always been Lebanon, then I don't mean to pick on Lebanon. It could be any country. It doesn't matter. And the older it is, the harder it is to undo. And, we can measure that around the world if we want to. Especially if you take into perspective that women are the magical creatures. Consider that. Women are our key to heaven. Ha! How the universe is established is everything that you remember is a lesson. How does that work? I had a memory last night that popped into my head. Well, now that I know a lot more about my perspective in the real life. So, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm a man, so I'm going to refer to my father, but this is nothing against him. Well, I had to trim my nose hairs. Jeez, oh man. And shave. I look like an animal. I was born with my father's sins, right? He deals with fear, anger, guilt, and resentment the same way, stuffs it down. Full of negative energy, right? But from my perspective, my father, as is everybody's when you're born, as long as they didn't run out or do something really silly on you, is your hero. And in a perfect world, your father learned all his emotions and he teaches them to you. But that's not how it works. We don't get all the emotions. My dad told me not to cry at funerals. Nothing against him, again. But I needed to be sad then. So you let it out so it doesn't get stuck. Because if it's stuck, it's in your brain, preventing you to glow in your heart. I got lots of stories. Those ones I gotta wait because I'm fighting for my kids in the courts. Because our world's so corrupt. The school system, all of it. It's nasty. It's a nasty world we live in. And it doesn't matter which chains you rattle or who you're screaming at. They're all in the same boat, so it doesn't matter. But it's okay. I learned not to fight. What am I going to do? Get angry and scream that people aren't doing their job? I don't care. I just have to save my kids. And, they're 12, so it'll be a while before I get them fixed up. And it's okay. My light will protect them. I wasn't smart enough to understand that God's light will protect you from anything. The more you believe in yourself, the less bad shit happens around you. I promise. But you have to understand that the more bad stuff happens around you, the more afraid you get, the more angry you get, the more resentful you get. Why? Because that's your go-to emotion. We're going to touch on resentment, and I mean no offense to this man. I love him as much as my brother. Quite literally. And I love my brother a lot. But unfortunately, he has a daughter with autism. Nonverbal. And what he has to understand is the bloodline. It came to a point where the biology changed because the emotions hurt too much. Essentially, the intuition gene was cut away, so they didn't have to feel. But instead of feeling, they just know. And that's because their pineal gland works. It just doesn't cause the energy. They don't get the energy, so they're flat. They're bad at communicating. And the reason they're bad at communicating is because they don't feel anything. And we all feel things. So we live in a world of feelings, and they live in a world of knowledge. They know everything. But we're not talking to them like that. We resent them. We feel bad for ourselves for having a kid we have to take care of the rest of our life. And there's two ways to deal with it. There's one way where you do the best with the tools given, and there's another one that you complain to everybody and your brother that you have an autistic kid, and you know, it's not like having an 18-year-old. She's going to be with me forever. That's resentment. You're filling your kid up with resentment. And I let him have it the other day. No anger, of course, because that's not necessary. It's just communication. The autistic are the most special among us. And I think we can teach them how to use their feelings. Because, and I'm sure people are working on this, but I can explain how it works, I believe. And I'm not an expert. So what I want to do is talk to autism experts so we can, the ones that want to actually figure this stuff out. But, you know, that's why there was a false study out there. It was out there so that the next person that tried to claim something, they were going to say it was bad science. So, I forget, what was it that caused autism, they said. I forget. What causes autism is generational abuse. The body can't handle the intuition. The feelings hurt too much. But good news is, one of my favorite people on the planet smiles when he sees me. He knows my name. It's important to me because he doesn't know his friend's name at school. I've heard this story at least 6 times. Out of disappointment too. And there should be no disappointment. There is no disappointment. Don't be disappointed that your autistic kid doesn't pay attention to certain people. You don't want them to. And when they do pay attention to certain people, pay attention to who those people are. Because ultimately they don't have feelings, but they see everything out there. So they know. They know. They know who's good and bad. We haven't been taught that for a reason, I'm sure. They're like beacons. They could spot somebody from a mile away. All of them. But they understand things. So if your autistic child, because we're all individuals, but if your autistic child likes being outside, then associate safety and security with tree. And then you can ask him how he's feeling, because he'll tell you. Tree. Right? Something fundamentally that easy. Associate a feeling with with a tangible, silly thing around us. I would use the environment because that's, you know, the best light. That's where they're gonna shine the most, is God's creation. So tree or lake or water, what they're afraid of. And then you can ask them how they're feeling. And if they say spider, they're afraid. But maybe your kid likes spiders, and then they'll be happy. It's important. I'm not doing another long video. I'm going to cut this one off.